What is going on, my family? Man, oh man, oh man. Capcom. Capcom. Boy, Capcom. What a week it has been for that developer. I gotta tell y'all, man. It sucks to be Capcom right now. It sucks to be that developer right now. You know, you had the Street Fighter 6 trailer. You know, everything was all good. Everybody was impressed by it. It was pretty cool. You know what I'm saying? Then after the Street Fighter 6 trailer, then you had the logo issue. Motherfuckers is tripping off of the logo. They don't like the logo. People was like, Capcom changed this motherfucking logo because they said that, you know, a lot of people are like, the logo looked like a comic book font or some shit like that, which, you know, a logo is a logo to me. I ain't have a problem with the logo, but shit. Capcom having logo issues right now. Now they got this thing with the whole fucking they bullshit tourney setups and all of that shit, man. It is just crazy. It's like, Capcom, what the fuck are y'all doing? Y'all tourney policies and all that shit. What are y'all doing, Capcom? What the fuck is this developer doing? I mean, I kind of understand what's going on with Capcom. Capcom is so fucking desperate right now. This is a desperate ass developer. And I think the reason for it is, I don't know how many of the old heads at Capcom are still there, or if any veterans are still running that whole company. But I kind of feel like with Capcom right now, Capcom, they're seeing what's going on with SNK. SNK is whooping their ass right now. Like, I've always preferred SNK over Capcom anyway. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But SNK is whooping their ass right now. Bandai Namco whooping their ass right now. Sega is whooping their ass right now. You know, basically, everybody, you know, the FGC developers are just whooping Capcom's ass right now. Let's just keep it real. And right now, Capcom see that shit, and I think they're envious of what's going on, and they desperate as fuck. They are desperate as fuck to make anything work right now. I'm saying that's Capcom's mindset right now. But what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to start off. I got to go all the way back to practically where it all started with Capcom. Because the reason why I'm doing this is because, you know, I saw this deception from Capcom coming when I was a little bitty boy. When I was about 8, 9, 10 years old, I seen this shit. You know, I was that aware at the time. And the reason why I was that aware at the time, because I love games. I loved video games at the time. And the crazy thing was, you know, it all practically started with Street Fighter 2. Even though, you know, Street Fighter 1, aka Fighting Street, you know, some of us played it, but, you know, Fighting Street was what it was. It wasn't really all that. You know, it's all that now because of, you know, how long ago it was. But, you know, everything really started, you know, with Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter 2 was in everybody's house, especially the original Super Nintendo version. Everybody had that game. You know, we all grew up on Street Fighter 2. You know, everybody, me, my brothers, whoever, we all grew up on that shit. We all played the shit like crazy. It's Street Fighter 2 is still one of the greatest fighting games of all time. You know, and that's where it all started, you know, for Capcom. And when Street Fighter 2 took off, so did Capcom. Like I said, Street Fighter 2, everything was going good, but, you know, there's always going to be some competition because that's what it's all about. So you started getting, you know, other games that came out of the woodwork. You had SNK come out, you know, with games like Fatal Fury and all of that. And then you had Mortal Kombat come out. And, you know, Mortal Kombat was its own, you know, own thing. It was a fighting game, but Mortal Kombat was completely something different. And the thing is, people still played Street Fighter like crazy. But here's the thing. After Street Fighter 2, and then there was Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and then there was Street Fighter 2 Champions Edition. I was starting to be like, what's going on here? Why are they releasing Street Fighter 2 so much? Because I'm like an 8-year-old kid at the time. like 7 or 8 years old, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, I'm asking my brother. I'm like, Tony, why they keep bringing out another Street Fighter? My brother's like, shut up, you about to get whooped. So my brother never told me the real answer because he always whooped me in the fucking game. And I'm just saying to myself, like, this is just the same game. Yeah, the Super Street Fighter 2 came out. We got 4 new characters, but it was just the same thing going on. And I'm just like, what's going on here? I want a Street Fighter 3. I'm 8 years old at the time. I can count to 3. It kind of seemed like Capcom couldn't. And the thing is, this is what kind of made me prefer to Mortal Kombat. And after that, that is when I just completely fell in love with Mortal Kombat, because Mortal Kombat wasn't doing that. Mortal Kombat was not going Mortal Kombat 1, Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat 2 Turbo, crap like that. Mortal Kombat was not doing that. Mortal Kombat gave us something innovative every release. And because of that, I went on the lines of Mortal Kombat, because every time Mortal Kombat got released, it was something new, something fresh, and something innovative. Every single Street Fighter release, it was the same thing. It was just Street Fighter 2 all over again. And me being so young at the time, I got tired of it because I'm so little. I always want something fresh. So that's when I always preferred Mortal Kombat over Street Fighter. And then you had the SNK games. They always released fresh things. It wasn't just a 1, a 2, and then a whole bunch of 2s. You know what I'm saying, with the SNK games. They always gave us innovative sequels. So, it took Capcom so long to give us a new Street Fighter game. I would probably gotta say around 1994, maybe 1995, maybe like around the 1995 area. Street Fighter wasn't being played because people were getting sick and tired of the same Street Fighter 2 releases. Then you had the Street Fighter 2, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which you can only get for the fucking 3DO, which was, I don't know what Capcom was thinking with that one. Knowing back in that day, we couldn't afford no fucking console like that. You know what I'm saying? We all grew up on 16 and the 32-bit consoles. So that was a fucked up move that Capcom had did with that game. Still don't understand why they did that. And so it got to the point Street Fighter was not being played. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't being played because we had so many other games. You had Mortal Kombat, Killer Instinct was making a splash, SNK games, KOF was coming out. You had Fatal Fury, Samurai Showdown, Primal Rage. You had so many fighting games that were doing innovative things while Street Fighter just wasn't doing nothing. And that's when I first started to kind of see, like, what the hell is going on with Capcom? Why is this developer so stagnant in what they do? Now, they did come with Street Fighter Alpha. Street Fighter Alpha was fresh, you know what I'm saying? And then it expanded to their other titles, you know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, this has got to be some type of scheme. This has got to be some type of company scheme that Capcom is doing. Like, just keep releasing the same titles and being, because Capcom knew their audience. They knew their audience. They knew their audience was real young kids that were spending their allowances and lunch money on their games. So they just kept bringing out the same fucking games. And it got really bad when the Marvel vs. games came out, because you had X-Men versus Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter, Marvel versus Capcom. I will say this, Marvel Superhero versus Street Fighter, that game was fire. Even though the problem with those games, they were all incomplete games. When they came out for home consoles, those games were incomplete. They were half-assed from the arcade counterparts. But Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter was fire regardless. But still, the point was, Capcom was giving us incomplete games back then, and a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people, those Marvel versus games, they were incomplete. They really was. Then they finally fixed it with Marvel versus Capcom 2. But before then, those games were incomplete, and Capcom kept bringing them out. like a couple of months after each other. Like, you know, you had X-Men versus Street Fighter. A few months later, Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter. I picked that game up. And then, of course, Marvel vs. Capcom. Now, the first Marvel vs. Capcom was super garbage. It was super garbage because it was incomplete. It was just nothing like the arcade version. So I don't think really a lot of people played that one. And I think that's when people really was starting to be like, okay, you know what? Capcom think motherfuckers is dumb. You know what I'm saying? Miraculously, then you had the Street Fighter 3 set, and then Capcom just went quiet. You know, they went quiet for several years to the point where we almost thought we'll never see a Street Fighter game again. They left that long, but you know, that's just one of those things right there. It don't matter how long a fighting game is absent, and when that fighting game, you know, everybody like to say a fighting game is dead. It doesn't matter how long a fighting game is absent. It's, you know, Street Fighter was already established to that point. It's not dead. It was just absent for a long time. I think there was, after Third Strike, Street Fighter was absent for a good 8 years. I think Third Strike was like 2000, 2001. Then Street Fighter 4, what 2007, 2008. So you talking about a good 7 to 8 years almost. You know what I'm saying? And people were like, damn, where's Capcom at? You know, Capcom just completely Capcom just fell off the map. They fell off the map for a lot of years. Like, for the latter half of that PS2 era, we didn't hear shit from Capcom. We didn't hear nothing from Capcom. We did get we got the Capcom versus SNK series, but I think that was still like around the time of Third Strike. So really after that, you know, Capcom really, you know, just disappeared. And my thing is this, I kind of felt like the reason for that was because I kind of felt that Capcom had ran out of con ideas. You know what I'm saying? They were a company that really thrived off of taking people's lunch money. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like a thing like where you go to an amusement park and you got this thing where you feed the fish and you just keep throwing the fish food out there, and then you see the fish up there begging for more, but you only throw a little bit more out there, but it's not enough for the fish. The fish want more. That's what Capcom was doing. Capcom was just throwing little pieces at us, and a lot of motherfuckers was hungry. They was hungry, and then they were taking it, and then it just got to the point where Capcom, you know, they were getting figured out to a certain extent. Because I was seeing it, because at the times, you know, we had those gaming books like the Electronic Gaming Monthly and Game Pros. You know, I collected all of that shit. They were talking. They were just like, you know what? Yeah, Capcom knows we done figured them out and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? So the gaming books were saying it, you know, all that type of shit. So they needed to find out another plan of attack. They needed to find another way to skim people off their money or make a quick buck, because Capcom, they are a company that is known for that. Capcom will rush out a game in 2 weeks just to make a penny off of it. You feel what I'm saying? Street Fighter EX2, prime example. When that game came out, Capcom looked like they only worked on it for like 4 hours and then brung the whole fucking game out. That game was so fucking garbage. So we already know Capcom is willing to do whatever the fuck it takes to get a nickel out of a motherfucker. They will release a garbage game and spice it up like it's the best game ever made. And that's another thing too. Please, somebody, tell me in the comment section, especially around that time, why was it that every time a Capcom game came out, it was always labeled as the greatest game ever made? Every time a Capcom game came out, oh, this could possibly be the greatest game ever made. Breath of Fire 3, it could possibly be the greatest game ever made. The Mega Man X, oh, it could possibly be the greatest game ever made. I just never understood that. Every time a Capcom game came out, somebody is always saying it could possibly be the greatest game ever made. I'm like, Shut the fuck up, motherfuckers. I'm like, for real, I don't do that greatest game ever made shit. I really don't. That ain't fair to all of these developers. Y'all, if y'all know what these developers and shit had to go through, y'all will understand that greatest game ever made bullshit. Get that shit out of there. But for some strange reason, every time Capcom released something, somebody would always say it's like the greatest game ever made. That really pissed me off. That shit got on my fucking nerves. It's one of the reasons why I don't like Capcom now, because Capcom is a company, they don't put no effort into their shit. They really don't. Unless it's Resident Evil, they don't put no effort into their shit. See what happened with Street Fighter 5. They didn't put no effort into that. You know, Street Fighter 6, we are all hoping that Capcom learned their lesson and not be no fucking knuckleheads and do the shit right. You know, do it like they did with Street Fighter 4. And see, the thing with Street Fighter 4, they had to do the shit right. I kind of felt like if Street Fighter 4 did not succeed the way that they wanted to, I think that probably would have been the end of Capcom. I honestly do think so. If Street Fighter 4 didn't perform like they wanted it to. But fortunately, it did. And Street Fighter 4 was a big hit. They had a lot riding on Street Fighter 4, for real. It just Street Fighter 4 gave off that vibe like, you know what, this is Capcom's final chance here. They got to make something out of it. And they did. And Street Fighter 4 came through. A lot of people played it, including myself. Street Fighter 4 was fun, masterpiece. And, you know, Capcom, you know, they got off with that. You know, and then, you know, Capcom has, like a lot of other developers, Capcom has always been stingy with their side titles like Darkstalkers and Power Stone Rival Schools. And, you know, these developers, I just don't really understand why they don't go to their other classic titles. Now, that's not just Capcom. That's really just every gaming developer in the world right now. They're just focused on those same two titles. Those same two titles. With Capcom, it's Street Fighter and Resident Evil. That's all we see from them. But, you know, Capcom, then they'll have this little arcade collection that they like to do every few years. Their anniversary collections, they'll do some shit like that. Essentially, you know, it's just those two titles. Resident Evil and Street Fighter. And every developer is just like that. I just hope, I really do hope that will change very soon. That all of these developers will just open their dictionaries up and bring all of these titles back instead of focusing on two big titles. It's like that with every developer. Like I said with Capcom, Street Fighter, Resident Evil, Rockstar, GTA and Red Dead, you know, NRS, Mortal Kombat and Injustice. Although they did say Injustice 3 ain't coming, they canceled that, so that's going to be kind of interesting to see what's going on there. But that's another topic for another day. But, you know, Ubisoft is just practically Assassin's Creed. The thing about it is with Capcom is, like after Street Fighter 4, you know, Capcom released, you know, they released more games after that, but the games did not perform well. Like that Resident Evil 6. Now, Resident Evil 6, a lot of people didn't like Resident Evil 6 because it was not a Resident Evil game. It was like Capcom once again showed how desperate they was with Resident Evil 6. Because when I first played Resident Evil 6, I'm like, damn, this is like some type of Call of Duty shit. It was damn near like Call of Duty Zombies. That's how Resident Evil 6 was. And I'm just sitting up here like, god damn. Capcom desperate than a motherfucker. They trying to turn Resident Evil into Call of Duty. I'm like, man, oh man, oh man. Like Resident Evil 6, it was, you know, it was fun, but it wasn't Resident Evil. It was like, you know, so a lot of people got kind of pissed off about that. And, you know, Resident Evil 6, it was real controversial. They said it was a failure. Like, I really don't know. But it was fun because from what it was like Call of Duty Zombies, you know. But then they made that other Resident Evil game. Oh my god, it was just so terrible. I forgot the name of. I think it was Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. I don't know. I could be wrong, but it was just a terrible Resident Evil game. Capcom made that shit. That was once again. That's another game that Capcom just brung out like they just made that shit in 4 hours. Man, the characters in that game looked like they were paper cut. I mean, I think it is Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. I know somebody will correct me in the comment section, but I think it is Operation Raccoon City. I think that was the name of it. The game was so trash, I forgot the name of it. But after Capcom did that shit, it was time to worry. And after that game, then that's when we all got the news that Capcom was literally about to go broke. They were literally about to go out of business. I'm just like, wow. Like, I wasn't surprised because the shitty practices and going back, to the 90s era, to the 1632-bit era. I was telling the Capcom fanboys this shit. I was just like, hey, the shit that Capcom doing right now, this shit gonna bite them in the future. And it did. It did. And then we already know what happened with Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Man, that was it, man. Capcom damn near killed themselves with that. They were making people pay for characters that were already on the game. They were already, boy. I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I did not play that game. I'm glad I did not play Street Fighter Cross Tekken. And I will. Everybody want a sequel of that game. I don't. And if they ever made a sequel of that game, I will never fucking play that. I will never fucking play a Street Fighter Cross Tekken game ever. I will never fucking play that game. I will never fucking play that game. One of the things about Street Fighter Cross Tekken, it was too goddamn obvious. Okay? It was too goddamn obvious. There's a reason why it happened. I'm not going to get into the details, but there's a reason why they did that. But after what Capcom did with that game, that was some bullshit. Making people pay for characters that were practically already, I guess you could say, paid for. They were just behind a wall. That was crazy. That was crazy. We not even talking about DLC. Those characters were already there and people had to pay for that. That was disgusting. That was disgusting. That's why I said Capcom is probably one of the most desperate ass developers in gaming right now. They really are. And like I said, I'm the type of motherfucker. I've criticized Capcom so much in the past because they deserve it. They do some stupid shit. They practices are kindergarten practices. And and they still trying to do it in a different way today. With this whole shit, what they're doing with their tournament licensing. You feel what I'm saying? And the thing about this whole thing is, the reason why people are so upset with this is because it feels like you're fucking getting. It doesn't even feel like you're getting registered for something. It feels like you have to get thumbprinted or some shit. You feel what I'm saying? And people don't like that. You know what I'm saying? People don't like that. People think it's a little bit too personal. Of course, when you register for something, you gotta have a couple of things. But the shit is really too personal. I think that's what people are kind of pissed off about. It's too personal. It's like you have to get thumbprinted and all of that fucking shit. I mean, that was a joke, but it's just like you just gotta do too much. It's like you signing for a fucking apartment or some damn shit. You feel what I'm saying? And I'm just sitting up here like, why the fuck would they do some stupid ass shit like that? You just released a good trailer. You just had eyes on you, Capcom. Why are you doing shit like this? Why are you doing shit like this? And one of the things about it is, Capcom is also notorious for making dumbass trends. Now, who else is gonna follow this shit? That's gonna be the fucked up part, because somebody out there in the FGC is gonna follow what Capcom just did with their whole fucking BS, licensing policy and all of that shit. Somebody gonna follow it. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of the things that Capcom needs to be fucking careful about. They are a developer that when they do something, someone is gonna follow. Capcom does have that type of clout. And somebody out there gonna follow this. I hope it's not SNK or Bandai Namco or nobody like that. But the thing about this is, what Capcom just did with their whole tourney licensing and all of that shit, I just kind of feel like, This developer is, like I said, they've gotten super desperate, and it's almost Capcom has just said, fuck it. Fuck it, like, fuck the people. Fuck, it's like they just said one big F it right now and went on ahead and did this shit. Because this really don't even make sense. Everything was good. Like the whole Capcom Pro Tour they had going on, it was great. Why are they messing with it? Don't mess with this fucking shit, man. Maybe Capcom might go back on it. Who knows? But that shit was crazy what Capcom is doing. Like what they continue to do. It's like they are a fucking kindergarten scheme kind of company. Like for real. And like I said, I've seen this shit way back in the 16-bit days with Capcom with all those fucking releases. They was releasing Street Fighter games like a comic, like a mini comic book series. But it wasn't, they weren't sequels. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they're all classic. You know, I'll give them that. But at the same time, think about it. All of those releases of the same title. But you know what? Every developer got they shitty business practices. Especially this motherfucker like here with Capcom. But I'm going to end this video off by saying this. Number one, Capcom is getting exactly what they deserve right now. I have no sympathy for them. I don't feel sorry for them because this is something they have been doing for the last 30 years. And Capcom has proven that they're just not going to keep doing this. These shitty practices that they do, they're not going to stop. Like I said before, Capcom definitely getting what they deserve because I remember what they did to SNK back in the day. So, Capcom, y'all definitely getting what y'all deserve right now. The way that y'all treated SNK back in the day, y'all definitely deserve this. And Capcom needs to accept it. You know what I'm saying? And I said this shit, I actually tweeted this on Twitter, is that Capcom have fumbled the ball way too many times. It's time to really stop dwelling on Capcom for innovation now. Those years are over with. Capcom is no longer in that driver's seat. I personally never thought they were. You know, they've done a lot of, Capcom has gave us a lot of iconic titles like a lot of these other developers have. You know, they have revolutionized gaming as well as FGC just like all of these other developers have. You know what I'm saying? They were not the first company to make a fighting game. A lot of idiots out there are saying that. Capcom was not the first company to make a fighting game. That's not true. They just, you know, they were just a company that revolutionized a genre that was already there. And everybody has their turn at revolutionizing something. That's the cycle. That's like a circle of life, right? So, with Capcom, like I said before, Capcom has found themselves back in, I guess you could say, the Street Fighter 4 zone, where Street Fighter 6 better do good. I think if Street Fighter 6 don't do good, I think Capcom is dead. I really do. Because I'm going to keep it real. Resident Evil ain't what it used to be. Ain't nobody really checking for that game no more. And you can kind of tell with Resident Evil 9 how kind of, yeah, I didn't like it. I just didn't like what was going on with Resident Evil 9. I did not like the focus on, I'm even disgusted to even say the focus on the sexual approach of Resident Evil 9. Wasn't really feeling it. So Resident Evil ain't what it used to be. A lot of people know that. They just capping. It's not what it used to be. I always thought Resident Evil 4 was like the last great Resident Evil game. So I kind of feel like Capcom is back in Street Fighter 4 zone right now, where, you know, everything is riding on Street Fighter 6. I think Street Fighter 6 has to do well, and I want to say Street Fighter 6 will do well, but it's just the way that they handle Street Fighter 5. We just gotta see. You know what I'm saying? I am excited for Street Fighter 6 because Capcom is finally doing something innovative. Like Street Fighter 5 was not innovative. Street Fighter 5 did not show us anything particularly new. It is it's getting to the point where I'm not really looking for stuff totally new from these fighting games. I'm just looking for a little piece of something new. Street Fighter 5 did not bring that. So Street Fighter 6, they're already showing us what they're doing new with it. They're taking a cinematic approach, and from what Street Fighter 6 looks like, I think Street Fighter 6 might be a little bit like Killer Instinct. I think they're gonna build like a little combo system to kind of make it kind of rival Killer Instinct a little bit, which I like. I hope it is something like that, and I think and I hope with Street Fighter 6 that they're gonna put the classic turbo speed back into the game, because Street Fighter 5 was just too slow. It was. A lot of us are used to Street Fighter games just being ultra fast. Street Fighter 4 was a fast game, even though it didn't really seem like it, but it was a pretty fast game. Street Fighter 5 was just slow. I'm like, damn, this is not a Street Fighter game. You know what I'm saying? It was a really slow game. But Capcom really needs to come through with Street Fighter 6. They need to learn from their mistakes, and they need to cut the bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Like they shitty practices and all of that shit. They need to cut that shit. But that's what I wanted to come on here and talk about today. This shit with Capcom, and this is something that they have been doing for the last 30 or something years. And I think the thing with Capcom is that, as I said earlier, they're very envious right now of these other developers, and I think Capcom is just trying to find a way to get successful and get bucks really quick, because I truly do think Capcom is envious of all these other developers that are doing well in the fighting game scene. And I think Capcom is they're trying to find a way to shoot themselves up to the top, but they are shooting themselves in the goddamn foot. And Capcom, y'all need to cut the shit out. Okay? Capcom just needs to be who they are right now. And who they are a mediocre developer right now. They're not top 5, they're not top 10 anymore. Back in the day, I had Capcom probably in the top 5 back in the day. They're not even in the top 10, maybe not even top 15 now. Capcom needs to accept that, and they will never get back to that level. Because right now, you got developers that are just tearing it up right now. SNK is doing it big right now. Right now, I'm telling you, and shout out to SNK, because that company and the short amount of workers that they have doing what they doing, man. Shout out to SNK. They doing it big right now. Like I said, and you got the Guilty Gear team. They also doing great things right now. So, and of course you got Sega with VF. So Capcom just need to accept shit. They just need to accept they're no longer one of the front runners anymore. Because that's what it is. They envious. To a certain extent, like jealous right now. They really are. And the reason why I know this is because of the practices that they're doing. So, let me know what y'all think in the comment section below about this whole bullshit with Capcom and their fucking BS attorney license policy, all of that shit, how they just changing the shit up and all of that. Because I always thought it was something rotten in Denmark with that shit. But you know what? You know what's the saying? What's done in the dark always comes to light. And years later, look at Capcom. So, like, comment, and subscribe for more of this real talk shit. My name is Demetrius. I will holler back at y'all in the next video. I am out. God bless. Stay safe. Peace.